Well, hi there, boys and girls. Sorry, I was getting caught up in my book here, and I forgot the time. I'm Ken Sanders, and if you've been watching Story Time with Ken or Grandpop or whatever name you choose to call me, this is episode 5 already. 5 of them. I have a bookstore in downtown Salt Lake City, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus, as we call it, we've been closed for approximately the past 6 weeks. And although I know you children probably don't care about it, the governor of Utah and both the mayors of Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County have decided to partially reopen our city, our county, and our state to business again, which is, on one hand, is a really good thing because we're all of us in business. We're all suffering, and some of your mommies and daddies are probably working from home, and everybody's all crammed in, and it's spring, and we all want to get outside. But us booksellers, at least, think that we need to go slowly about the reopening because we care about the safety of ourselves, our employees, our staff, and especially our customers, because our customers who keep us in business. We think the opening is premature, and myself and my colleagues in Salt Lake City, the King's English Bookstore and Weller Bookworks, we've all signed a joint letter to the governor and the mayors that we sent off earlier this morning. Not that it'll do any good, but registering our opposition to what we consider to be a premature opening. None of us will be opening our stores at midnight tonight or tomorrow, as many others will be. I totally understand. Speaking for myself, my own business has been down by 50%, and that's not sustainable on a long-term basis. Anyhow, I'll quit with the politics and everything. But we're open for business. You can call, you can pick up books, you can do drive-by, you can order by mail, you can order online. We're happy to help you in every way we can. We are trying to come up with an active plan that we're comfortable with reopening our store to the public, but we want it based on medicine and science and not on politics. We'll open as soon as we can, but we are open to help you in every other way, except you can't technically come in and browse quite yet. I'm certainly not going to predict a date. Could it be a week, 2 weeks, a month? Because I simply do not know. I'm a bookseller. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical person, and thank goodness I'm not a politician. Woof. Okay, back to the children's books. That's what this show's all about, right? Oh, I got to give a shout out first. This is could it be an anagram? I can't remember. We have 5. Oh, I don't give it away. Okay, so the anagram, if it is an anagram, is asked, like A-S-K-E-D. Asked in the past tense. Asked. Okay, did you kids get it yet? Do you follow? Maybe not. If you take the names Alice, Serenity, Kinsley, Emma, and Devon, it spells out A-S-K-E-D, asked. Probably not very good, but that's what I got, okay? My own rat-faced Caporian grandchildren, Lyra, Flynn, are you guys watching tonight? The good thing about these shows is even though we're doing them live in real time here in the library of my home in Salt Lake City, You can watch them on Facebook or YouTube anytime that you wish. We began a new thing last time, reading some of my favorite books, but a few chapters at a time, books that are too long to read all in one session. So last week we began The Ship That Sailed to Mars by William Timlin, an Englishman that he and his wife spent their entire lives living in South Africa, the early part of the 20th century, over 100 years ago. And in 1923, Mr. Timlin wrote and illustrated and published one of the most magical, charming children's books ever done. The Ship That Sailed to Mars. Last week's episode, we got to the old man's laboratory, and he and the fairies built a sailing ship, and 12, I believe there were 12 crew plus the old man himself, a baker's dozen, sailed to Mars. And in tonight's episode, we're going to learn what happened to them when they were there. But we're going to mix it up too. I'm going to revisit some old favorites because it's my show and I get to talk about the books I want to do. And then after The Ship That Sails to Mars, we're going to have the usual break, about midway through the show. And if you've been watching the show for a few episodes now, you know that I have a different cookie jar every week. And the cookie jar is supposed to be full of cookies. But somehow, in some manner, mysterious manner that we don't know the answer to yet, there are never any cookies in the cookie jar. There are other things in the cookie jar. So who thinks tonight, will I finally get my cookie or not? We'll see at the break, okay? So let's get into The Ship That Sailed to Mars. It could be too dark to read it. I might need more light, Rebel Girl. I'm not sure if I can read The Ship to Sail to Mars without more light. Let's see. Okay. Last week, we got to the part where they described the whole journey to Mars and everything else. And now we're going to find out what happens on Mars. The arrival. Now they were come to the ultimate fringe of all the outer worlds, and solitary and splendid before them blazed the golden star of their search, and the air sprite bade them a gay farewell, for his usefulness was ended, and their way lay clear before them. A little awed at the fulfillment of their dream, the old man and his fairies gazed for some time at the radiant world, and then turned to hurry on the preparations for their imminent landing. And so the space flashed by them, and over the figurehead Mars loomed bigger and bigger till it filled the heavens. That their coming had been observed was certain, and whilst the surface of the land was still nebulous and opalescent, a cloud of moving specks was seen rising through the clear, warm air towards them, till in a little while the ship was surrounded by a multitude of fairies mounted on a variety of creatures, and above the beating of wings was heard a musical roar of welcome. So escorted, the ship dropped slowly towards a shining city. Here's the picture. Now I have no idea where to hold this book. Oh, there. The landing. As they arrived at the city of Mars, it was coming on to be evening, and the ship floated down through a wonderful purple twilight and came to rest, buoyant as a flower, on that placid mirror of a broad canal, from whose pellucid depths came flashing a band of mermaids to bear the ship near to where, on a marble causeway, stood many of importance in that city, to welcome the visitants. Then, as the old man, the first to step upon the quested land, bowed his greetings to the crowd, lining the water's edge like a border of flowers in a garden, one evidently to be considered as Lord Mayor, gave them a ponderous welcome in the name of the king. And a shout went up from all assembled, and a peal of silver trumpets sounded. From hidden towers, elfin bells rang gladly, and from those creatures circling above came a rain of flowers, fragrant, softly falling. Behind the causeway rose a wing of the royal palace of rosy gold-veined stone, and from an upper window a princess looked down. There's the princess. The presentation through those fantastic streets, the old man was conducted, and his fairies and bearers with all the earth-sent presents followed after. And the air was goblin-haunted with the breath of thin, sweet music from balconies overhung under the fairy lamps. The moving medley of the crowd could be dimly seen, the diaphanous figures and smiling faces of the women, the gnomish features of the men, or the incredible mask of some impossible beast shambling on its way. The city rose before them. There in the dimness, against a shop nearby, a slim towered palace, and behind and away, roof over roof, tower and spire, dome and minaret, twinkling into the sky. And on the height over which the city climbed stood a fairy temple of bewildering beauty. In the central hall, whose extent was the soaring height of the royal palace, the old man talked with the king, one old and wise, and one who must indeed have seen the making of fairyland. And gifts were given and received, and near the shoulder of the king stood a slim princess whose dark eyes gladdened as they looked upon the old man. The celebrations. From his room high up in a tower in the guest wing of the palace, the old man saw a gossamer mesh of lights break out all over the city, for the night was fully dark. In a chamber nearby, he could hear the excited chattering of his fairies. Arching above his head were the spangled stars, the worlds he had so fearfully navigated. A steely, sullen glitter in the midst showed to him his own earth, and he perceived it was near the line of those planets which the gods, growing weary of their presence, brush off with careless hands into flaming, headlong incandescence. Maybe its life was yet only another 100,000 years. Now already the city was ablaze with lights of welcome and fairy bridges across the great canal as shimmering half-hoops of jewels, boats, and wonderful barges moved in slow procession along its waterways. At a courteous summons, the old man and his fairies descended and entered the royal barge, a gemmed, beflowered dream, and were seated near the king. Regally, they sailed through the widening waterways between acclaiming crowds, and the ship that sailed to Mars was towed behind. Among her maids in the prow of the royal barge, the princess smiled happily. The log. Near to dawn, the old man sat making a last entry in his log. He wrote, "I have come as was intended and must have been decreed to a most amazing land called Mars, a land peopled not by things of various and curious deformities, but by fairies of unusual grace and beauty. And their chief city is of amazing opulence, and is built around and upon a hill, and canals radiate therefrom through wooded valleys, and flowers grow everywhere. One notable plant, flowered like an orchid, drifts growing through the air. Their beasts, harmless and subservient, are grotesque and weird to look upon, and many are winged and are ridden aloft. The delicate art of these fairies are shown in the tracery of their wonderful bridges. Their palaces are a white delight, and their fountain terraces and gardens of a beauty undreamt of by men. They have in profusion the jewels and precious metals known to earth, as well as others not to be recognized by me. All are happy, although I heard a doleful hint of a horror called the Thunder City, and saw a single black-cloaked figure brooding amongst the crowd." The temple. All the old man's fairies had now left him to live with more congenial spirits among the king's barge builders. He was scarcely aware of their departure, so busy was he exploring the wonders of that city. Everywhere his presence passed unchallenged, and his friendly greetings were smilingly returned. Or an elf would run out from some low-browed jeweler's shop and press a priceless ruby into his hand. Or a fairy would strip off her necklace of moonstones for him, and many banquets were given in his honor. Now the Martians have a belief that all was once miraculously created, and to the Creator they have raised a temple on the apex of hill, myriad pinnacled with daring spans of flying buttress and airy bridge. Every while they had added to it, till in time it had become an ineffable shrine of gratitude and joy. And it was a place of supreme happiness. The old man spent much of his leisure for many days wandering along its terraces and up and around the great central spire, or viewing the treasures with which the place overflowed, and sometimes with him went the princess. The zoo. Now, the city has a zoo of great magnitude, and of which the fairies are not a little proud. And its making was thus. On their arrival at Mars, following their flight from the moon, they found the land fair and free of man or fairy, but roaming its woods were harmless but inexpressibly hideous things. Many were like unto the evil thoughts of a maniac at moonrise. Others were sluggish, amiable beasts. And then there were those monsters that monsters. Then, as it was rather trying to the feelings of even fairies to step into a dell and find a towering monstrosity dozing in that cool retreat, or wake up in the night to see an unnameable thing with creaking wings perched upon the couch's end, they organized a great hunt, and nearly all of these pests were driven in and housed and caged in a place appointed. There, amidst a herd of moon calves, the old man saw the cow which he had presented to the intensely gratified princess, and its demeanor was one of complete bovine content and absurd commonplace complacence. For ever there came multitudes to see the wonderful and fearsome creature from earth. Here's the zoo. The palace gardens. At the close of his day's wanderings, the old man would come back gratefully to the palace gardens and sit near a fairy fountain in the shade of some unknown tree, while the trailing blooms of the air plant floated slowly along on the scented breeze. And often the princess sat with him, her slimness curled amongst silken cushions, and her dresses were always of fragile fairy textures, rarely woven and quaintly patterned. Away behind her rose the balconies of the palace, huge against the sunset. Sometimes she was pensive as he talked of the terrors and storms upon earth, and other whiles her manner was as one having some grave request to make of the old man. The princess's chamber. One day the princess led the old man to her chamber, which it was said many artisans had slaved over for years to make beautiful. The walls were of dull polished silver and damasked with golden ornament and set with sapphires. The furniture was of silver and the hangings of peacock silks. And when they were alone, she told him what had shadowed her eyes for many days. When the city of Mars had been founded and builded for years and all was peace and joy, a fairy more venturesome than the rest set out one day over the hills, and he followed the moons for a long while, and he fled over marshes and mountains till glistening in the distance he saw the jagged crests would have since been called the Iron Hills. Over them hung a perpetual and gigantic storm. Cloud, lightning ran down the gorges like water, and always the thunder rolled. The sorrow. As the princess continued, the old man was able to sense the tragedy that had come upon the city of Mars. For the fairy she spoke of had stayed amongst the Iron Hills, and the desolation and recurrent rolling thunder had engendered a strange feeling, which was misery, although not then recognized by him as such. Yet withal he found it strangely pleasant. Therefore he stayed in that place and could hardly bear to go. But at last he resolved to return. Out of hearing of the thunder, the misery departed, but the memory remained. To others he imparted the knowledge of his discovery, and thus it was that during the past many had gone forth, and the strangeness of misery had entranced them, and none had ever returned. So sorrow had almost come near to the city, and the princess was almost sad, for but a short time before the prince, to whom she should ere now have been wed, had stolen away and was even now ruling in this dreadful city and worshipping within the blasphemous temple raised in honor of the thunder. Pointing across the gardens, the princess showed the old man the unfinished palace of her dreams, standing gaunt against the evening light. Okay, boys and girls, that's the end for tonight. We'll call this part 2. There's one more part. We will finish in a week to see what on earth is going to happen with the old man, the princess, and Thunder City. I think it's gotta be break time by now. I'm pretty sure. My stomach sure is growling for that cookie. So, do you want to vote? What do you think? I've got my cookie jar here. One of these days I could run out of cookie jars, Then what? Okay, here we go. Can you see it? Look, it's a UFO cookie jar. Surely, I bet the old man sent me this cookie jar from Mars, didn't he? He wouldn't send it that entire way without a cookie in it, would he? Ooh, sounds like cookies. Okay, let's see. Wait a minute. Pogo, you were last week. What are you doing in my cookie jar? What? Oh no, there's an art. Oh, my stars and whiskers. There's an entire army of pogos in my cookie jar. Oh, how many pogos is that? Oh, wait. 5, look, 5, count them, 5 pogos in my cookie jar. Pogo, did you eat my cookies? There's something else. Oh, look at this. Oh, my stars and whiskers. It's a glow-in-the-dark Wolfman. Oh, one of my favorite monsters when I was a kid. Oh, man, Wolfman. What? Frank! Oh, my stars and whiskers, kids. It's Frankenstein. How did the Wolfman and Frankenstein get in my cookie jar? What are you guys doing in there? Where's the rest of your monster? There's no more monsters in the UFO cookie jar that flew all the way here. And I guess they must have got hungry on that. It's a long journey from Mars, boys and girls. So I guess they got hungry and ate my cookies. So I'm sure there was Dracula, Phantom of the Opera, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and all the rest. But I guess maybe they didn't make the journey. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if we'll ever find out. So, Flynn, Lyra, my rat-faced Caporans, are you guys watching tonight? Haven't been doing a lot of puns. I don't know. I'll have to maybe get going with that. One thing I wanted to share with you today, sometimes In times of stress, it's really fun to read a book that you've read before, you really, really like. It's like sometimes when we eat comfort food. We like to eat certain kinds of food because they're our favorites. And books are a lot like food to me because I like to devour them. I don't literally, eat them, but you know what I mean. I like to smell them though. This is an old one. So some of the comfort books of my childhood, series books. You guys, everybody knows this is Nancy Drew. Yay for Nancy Drew. Hard to figure out where to put Nancy. And so I have see these really cool old covers. The plastic's making it hard there. That angle maybe will work. This is vintage 1930s, 1940s Nancy Drew. And then look, here's 1960s Nancy Drew. They've updated her and made her more modern. The Clue, the Climbing Wall. Then, even these are more like 1970s, these really shiny ones. They made her even more modern. The Whispering Statue, Nancy Drew in the Case of the Whispering Statue. But of course, not to be outdone, Hardy Boys. Oh yeah, 2 of them. Now, when I was a boy, it was kind of hard to read. Boys read Hardy Boys books, and girls read Nancy Drew's. But tell you the truth, boys and girls, I read Nancy Drew's and the Hardy Boys, and Nancy Drew, she holds her own. Frankly, the Nancy Drew stories are better than the Hardy Boys stories. But I want to tell you something you might not know. You can read the books for yourselves, of course. But here's the Secret at Shadow Ranch. It's by Carolyn Keene, it says, the author. And here in the Hardy Boys, the author is Franklin W. Dixon. Well, boys and girls, we know the stories are made up, the mystery stories that the Hardy Boys do, and Nancy Drew, here's big lists of they have like 60, 70, 80 different stories. Well, I'm here to tell you, boys and girls, there is no Carolyn Keene. There is no Franklin W. Dixon. They're made up pseudonyms. A pseudonym is a name of an author that isn't real. It's made up. In the 1930s, a man named Frank Stratemeyer founded a publishing syndicate that he named it after himself, the Stratemeyer Syndicate, and he invented Franklin W. Dixon and Carolyn Keene. The real author of the Nancy Drew books was a little lady named Mildred Wirt, W-I-R-T. And for decades, from the 1930s to the 50s, she wrote them and published them under the Stratemeyer Syndicate author's name of Carolyn Keene. Carolyn Keene is as made up and not real as Nancy Drew is, and Mildred Wirt is the real author of all the original Nancy Drew stories. Now later on, many, many other authors wrote under the name Carolyn Keene, but truly, even though the Stratemeyer made up the concept of Nancy Drew, it was an anonymous author whose real name was Mildred Wirt. She wrote all of those wonderful stories and brought Nancy Drew to life for generations of boys and girls, going back to the 1930s. And she and the Hardy Boys, and there were dozens of others. That's the fun thing about Boys and Girls series, going from old to new, or new to old, since I've got the new ones on top. Other terrific series is Alfred Hitchcock's The Three Investigators. These are a little harder to find than Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. They weren't maybe as popular when they were new. So, of course, there's only one Nancy Drew, two Hardy Boys, but it took three investigators to equal the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. They're a fun series, great stuff. And then these, I bet a lot of you guys and gals out there know the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Oh, my stars and whiskers. Flynn, you'll remember when you were little how much you liked these. You could read yourself, but you much preferred Grandpa to read them to you. And the trick of all of there's fantasy and science fiction and mysteries and everything. The trick of, as you guys probably already know, the trick, here's the Lost Jewels of Naboth. So you start reading the book, and then it says, uh-oh, you're stuck in a cave, and a man-eating Martian monster that's 10 times bigger than you is about to gob you alive unless you pull the ring on the giant wooden door and fall off a cliff. And then you have to choose. Well, if you choose to fall off the cliff, turn to page so-and-so. If you choose to get eaten by the bat monster, turn to page this. Well, then something bad or something good happens to you. But of course, if you're a young kid like Flynn and Lyra used to be, they're getting to be big boys and girls now, right, you rat-faced Caparians! You don't like the ending that happened to you, right? Who wants, I don't want, you want to get eaten by the bat monster? You want to fall through the door down to a bottomless pit? Nobody wants that. So guess what? You have to keep reading and keep changing until you get an ending you like. So then you end up reading the book like 10 times over. Oh boy, I'm glad I don't have to read Choose Your Own Adventures to you two rat-faced Caparians anymore. It's a lot of work on the part of the reader. But they're kind of a fun series, and people really like them. One of my favorite series, when I was young, was Tom Swift. This is Tom Swift Jr., mind you. And he was like a scientist. This is Tom Swift and his flying lab. He was a young scientist. Man, I used to love to read the Tom Swift Juniors. But then I discovered Tom Swift Sr., and they were really old-fashioned. They were from like 19 teens, like literally 100 years ago and older. And this is Tom Swift and his motorcycle. They're kind of corny and outdated now, but they're still fun. And this whole concept of children's series books started a long time ago in the early, even in the 19th century, the 1800s, with Horatio Alger, Oliver Optic, long before Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys. And there are hundreds, probably thousands of them. Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, most of us have all heard of. But do you know about the Happy Hollisters? How about, hey, I bet who remembers the Bobbsey Twins? Oh, and Cherry Ames, student nurse? Or Trixie Belden? She was another detective. Or how about the Curly Tops? I bet nobody's ever heard of the Curly Tops. I never heard of the Curly Tops. And there's just endless amounts of these things, and they're really fun. Oh my gosh, my daughter, Melissa, when she was a little girl, this Babysitters Club. Oh, there's endless amounts of these, and little girls really like these babysitter. Here's another Bobbsey Twins. What else do I have here? Some of these are really old and people have forgotten. Buddy and his Fresh Air Camp. How's that for old-fashioned? Or Dan Carter and his Haunted Castle. And then there's, we got to get, look at this. Dorothy Dixon Wins Her Wings. Literally, there are thousands of these books and series. And then there's kind of a different kind of series that aren't quite, they're not endless ongoing series like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, but like Ellen Montgomery wrote the classic beautiful kids novel, Anne of Green Gables. Well, it is a series, though, because there's 6 or 7 books in the Anne of Green Gables series, so it's like a series. There's a lot, and of course, endless different editions of it. Back to my own childhood, I don't have any to show you of one, but 2 of my favorites were Miss Pickerel. Here's Miss Pickerel on the moon. And here is Miss Pickerel goes to the Arctic. She was quite an adventuresome. My very, very favorite one was Miss Pickerel Goes to Mars. I don't know how many Miss Pickerel books there were, but boy, she went everywhere from the moon to Mars to the Arctic Circle. And they were so much fun. And the other series I liked the best were Danny Dunn and the Anti-Gravity Paint. And there's a whole series of Danny Dunn books too. I gobbled those up, and I know we've talked about it before. One of my all-time favorite books from 3rd grade, that was Miss Rudy's class in the 3rd grade. I think Miss Rudy had a crush on me. I got straight A's that year. That included an A in penmanship, which if anybody has ever seen my handwriting, you probably wouldn't even give me an F. But that was a really fun year of school, and that's when I discovered the shy Stegosaurus of Cricket Creek. It's still one of my all-time favorite books, and I never ever knew that the author, Evelyn Lampman, wrote a sequel to it called The Shy Stegosaurus of Indian Springs. I think I've said this before. The Stegosaurus is my very, very favorite dinosaur. There's no other dinosaur I like in the world as much as a Stegosaurus. It's like my totem animal. I know they're extinct, mind you. So I just wanted to share because there's so many books out there. How about just because we can, we did Shel Silverstein a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember which episode. I think we're on episode 5 now. So I got a couple more Shelley Bellies. I think we'll read just for fun because there's nobody sillier than Shel Silverstein when he wants to be. The Bloath. In the undergrowth there dwells a Bloath who feeds upon poets and tea. Luckily, I know this about him, while he knows almost nothing of me. The Bloath. I forgot the picture, sorry. So I'll show you the picture first. Okay, this one is called What's in the Sack. It's hard to see, it's just a drawing of a man with a sack that's way bigger than him. What's in the sack? What's in the sack? Is it some mushrooms or is it the moon? Is it love letters or downy goose feathers or maybe the world's most enormous balloon? What's in the sack? That's all they asked me. Could it be popcorn or marbles or books? Is it 2 years worth of your dirty laundry or the biggest old meatball you've ever seen cooked? Does anyone ask me, hey, when is your birthday? Can you play Monopoly? Do you like beans? What is the capital of Yugoslavia? Or who embroidered that rose on your jeans? No, what's in the sack? That's all they care about. Is it a rock or a rolled up giraffe? Is it pickles or nickels or a busted bicycles? And if we guess it, will you give us half? Do they ask where I've been or how long I'll be staying, where I'll be going or when I'll be back? Or how do? Or what's new? Or hey, why are you blue? No, all they keep asking is, what's in the sack? What's in the sack? I'm blowing my stack at the next one who asks me, what's in the sack? Oh no, not you too. Okay, this is a pretty good one. What a day! What a day! Oh, what a day! My baby brother ran away, and now my tuba will not play. I'm 8 years old and turning gray. Oh, what a day! What a day! So, these are a few more of my favorite books. I have lots and lots of favorite books because I've been reading books for a very, very long time now. And the best part about reading books, sometimes you pick up a book and maybe you start to read it and think you're going to like it, but you don't like it. So there's no rule that says you have to finish a book you don't like. It's okay to just quit. It's kind of hard to do, I admit that, but if you don't like it, because there's always another one that you can pick up and read. That's the beauty of books. When the libraries reopen, you can go to the library and get them. You can download books online, and poetry too. Poetry can be really, really fun if you find the right poets that you like. And there's just so many different kinds of books because there's so many different kinds of people. And different people write them and draw them and illustrate them. And I really, everybody always asks me, what's your favorite book? It's kind of an unfair question, don't you think? Especially in my bookstore, I have 100,000 books. Now, I don't have nearly that many at home because I only bring my favorites home. But it's like picking your favorite child. That's not very fair. And they're all my favorites. So that's the beauty of having your own personal library, is you get to choose which books go in your library. And they should be the ones you like the most and care about. So have fun reading out there, and we'll see you in a week for episode 6 of Storytime with Ken Sanders at Ken Sanders Rare Books, Salt Lake City, Utah. KenSandersBooks.com. You can go online, you can buy books from us. It's hard to browse, and we'll keep you posted as soon as we think that it's safe to open up our bookstore again for you to come and see us in person. So, sweet dreams. Good night, all of you rat-faced Kaporians out there. Term of endearment. Remember that. Bye now. Oh,